You felt it, didn't you? That slight twitch in your thumb. That sudden, almost imperceptible urge to click away, to find something louder, faster, something that doesn't demand you look directly at the screen. Pause. Watch what happens in your body right now. That hesitation isn't boredom. It is the skip reflex. It is archonic interference running its daily diagnostic check on your mind. The Matrix has noticed you hovering over a truth it desperately needs to keep buried. There comes a moment when the life you've built feels strangely foreign. The conversations you once slipped into now feel rehearsed. The roles you've played suddenly sit heavy on your shoulders like clothes that no longer fit. Awakening feels like death because it is death. The death of the self you pretended to be. And the system's first line of defense against this death, the illusion of loneliness. You are sitting in a room, entirely by yourself, and a creeping anxiety wraps around your chest. It whispers that you are isolated, that you are missing out, that you are, somehow, failing at the human experience. But this is a calculated deception. You aren't lonely. You are being quarantined. The system operates on a collective frequency. It requires the constant hum of billions of sleeping minds exchanging shallow signals to maintain its structural integrity. When your soul memory begins to surface, when you start to access what we call recognition consciousness or frequency spikes, you become a glitch, a localized disturbance in the simulation. If you are ready to see the truth, if you are tired of the exhaustion that comes from pretending to be asleep, join the Awaken. Subscribe to this channel, and let us decode the reality they hid from you. The Matrix cannot afford to have a waking mind broadcasting a disruptive signal into the collective egregore. So, it initiates the isolation protocol. It weaponizes your biological need for a connection against you, making solitude feel unbearable. It wants you to panic, to reach for your phone, to run back into the chaotic noise of the sleeping crowd. Because as long as you are distracted by the fear of being alone, you will never realize the immense, terrifying power gathering within you in the silence. Forget everything you have been told about loneliness. It is not the absence of people. It is not a psychological defect or a failure to connect. Loneliness is a room full of people who cannot perceive your reality. It is the devastating friction of existing in a space where your soul's language is interpreted as static. To understand this, we must look to the forbidden physics of Itzhak Bentov. In Stalking the Wild Pendulum, Bentov revealed that the universe is not made of solid matter. It is a complex, interacting field of oscillating frequencies. Every thought, every heartbeat, every soul emits a specific vibratory signature. When you exist at one frequency and your environment vibrates at a significantly lower one, physics dictates that a violent dissonance will occur. This is exactly what you are experiencing when you stand in a crowded room, surrounded by friends or family, yet feel utterly, hopelessly alien. Pay attention to your physical body in those exact moments. You know the feeling, the sudden tightening in your chest, the way your breath becomes shallow, refusing to draw deeply, the subtle, vibrating tension in your jaw. Modern psychology will quickly label this as social anxiety and offer you a pill to numb it. But this is not anxiety. That tightening in your chest is a somatic cue of biological resistance. Your physical vessel is bracing itself against a severe frequency mismatch. You are vibrating at the accelerated rate of awakening, while the room is heavily anchored to the dense, lethargic rhythm of the Matrix. The system sustains its low frequency by populating your immediate reality with what esoteric traditions sometimes refer to as organic portals. These are not malicious entities. They are simply the background architecture of the simulation individuals operating strictly on the baseline frequencies of survival, consumption, and egoic validation. They are deeply embedded in the sleep state. When you interact with an organic portal, Your energetic field instinctively seeks resonance. It attempts to find a matching wavelength. But because they are structurally incapable of meeting you at a higher, multidimensional octave, your frequency violently forced to step down. You have to compress your infinite nature into a tiny, acceptable box just to make small talk. This stepping down process requires a catastrophic amount of soul energy. It is the spiritual equivalent of trying to sprint through waist-deep mud. Watch what happens in your body during these moments. You leave a simple, seemingly harmless conversation feeling entirely drained. Your limbs feel heavy. Your mind is clouded with a strange, heavy fog. The system tells you that you just need to put yourself out there more. It tells you that isolation is dangerous. The truth, you were just harvested. Your energy was siphoned to maintain the equilibrium of the sleeping crowd. You were used as a battery for the egregore. The crushing loneliness you feel in the middle of the night is not a cry for company. It is your soul screaming for resonance. It is a visceral, preconscious awareness that your internal pendulums are swinging wildly, attempting to break free from the gravitational pull of the herd. To attempt to cure this loneliness by forcing yourself back into the very crowd that drains you is spiritual suicide. You are willfully lowering your vibration just to avoid the temporary, necessary discomfort of the void. The friction will only escalate. You cannot successfully fit a multidimensional consciousness back into a three-dimensional cage once the lock has been broken. The Matrix is not merely a passive environment or a neutral staging ground for human experience. It is a predatory, reactive, and highly intelligent organism. It does not simply trap you. It feeds on you. It feeds on conformity, and it starves in the immediate presence of true sovereignty. To maintain its total dominance and keep the simulation running smoothly, it has engineered one of its most masterful deceptions: the complete weaponization of the crowd. Have you ever noticed how fiercely the system incentivizes shallow, continuous connection? It rewards you with sharp, momentary spikes of dopamine for digital likes, for superficial small talk, for perfectly conforming to the unspoken, rigid rules of the group. But this dopamine is an elaborate trap. It is a synthetic, chemical high designed entirely to mimic the profound, sustaining nourishment of true spiritual resonance, keeping you addicted to a diet of empty calories. The crowd is not merely a collection of individual humans wandering through life. When people gather unconsciously, driven by ego, deep-seated fear, or desperate, clawing need for external validation, they merge. They form an egregore massive, autonomous, parasitic thought form. This egregore possesses its own primitive instinct for survival, and it views a rising frequency, a truly sovereign mind, as a direct, existential threat to its continuous food supply. Consider this. When you begin to awaken, you emit a subtle, undeniable signal into the ether. Your soul initiates a specific, evolutionary protocol that we call the whisper to disruption arc. This is the foundational escalation logic of your awakening. In the first stage of the whisper, the soul speaks quietly. It does not shout. It simply alters your palate for reality. You suddenly lose the taste for your usual, reliable distractions. The gossip that used to entertain you now feels vile, heavy, and toxic on your tongue. The weekend gatherings and the Friday night parties suddenly feel like standing in a beautifully decorated graveyard. The soul is gently, persistently urging you to withdraw, to create the necessary, silent space for your biological and energetic frequency recalibration. But the ego panics. The ego is deeply, fundamentally intertwined with the archonic programming of the Matrix. It possesses a pre-installed survival code that equates the presence of the herd with absolute safety. It screams into your mind that withdrawal means social death, that being forgotten by the crowd is the ultimate, unforgivable failure. So, It drives you back into the noise, seeking that familiar dopamine hit, desperate to prove you still exist. Here is where the Matrix deploys its most insidious, vampiric tactic against your ascending consciousness. When you force yourself into spaces where you no longer fundamentally belong, when you suppress your soul's whisper to appease the demands of the egregore, it actively begins to feed on your life force. You become a willing battery for the simulation. Watch what happens in your physical body during these forced, artificial interactions. You don't just feel tired at the end of the night. You feel violently hollowed out. There's a distinct, physical sensation of an empty, aching cavern in your gut. Your energy, your precious multidimensional biocurrency, is being siphoned. It is being drained away to power the very collective illusion that is actively suffocating your awakening. The system wants you in a perpetual state of exhaustion. Let that sink in. An exhausted mind cannot question the fundamental nature of its reality. A drained soul cannot maintain the high-frequency oscillation required to pierce the heavy veil of the simulation. By keeping you frantically running from one shallow interaction to the next, absolutely terrified of missing out, the Matrix ensures you never accumulate the surplus energy needed to initiate an escape velocity. But the soul is relentless. What happens if you continue to stubbornly ignore the whisper? What happens if you persistently override your soul's demand for isolation, clinging desperately to the dying, decaying roots of your former social identity? The Matrix will assist you, but not in any way your ego will appreciate or understand. The universe shifts abruptly from the subtle whisper to the violent disruption. If you will not voluntarily, consciously separate yourself from the herd, the system will violently shatter the connections for you. This is the exact moment your reality experiences a severe timeline fracture, a forced pivot point to realign you with your true trajectory. Suddenly, relationships that lasted for years implode overnight without any logical explanation. Friends betray you, misunderstand you entirely, or mysteriously drift away into the background noise of the past. You find yourself ostracized from your trusted circles, suddenly fired from your comfortable job, or abruptly forced to relocate. To the untrained eye, to the terrified ego, this looks like a devastating tragedy. It looks like a catastrophic failure of your life's architecture. But look closer. Pierce the illusion of the immediate pain. This is not a punishment. It is a brutal, entirely necessary extraction. The universe is forcibly disconnecting you from your localized matrix. It is tearing down the heavy, rotting scaffolding of your old life precisely because you lack the courage to dismantle it yourself. The disruption is, in absolute truth, a magnificent act of brutal grace. It is the universe severing the parasitic, suffocating cords of the egregore because your soul's absolute mandate for evolution has finally, definitively overpowered your ego's pathetic desire for comfort and conformity. You are being pushed out of the suffocating nest of the simulation, forced into the open air whether you believe you have wings or not. Now imagine standing in the smoking ruins of your social identity. The endless dopamine supply has finally been cut off. The artificial, deafening noise of the crowd has been permanently, blissfully silenced. You are entirely, unapologetically alone. And for the first time in your existence, the Matrix is terrified of you, because now, with the distractions completely burned away, there is only one place left for you to look. You are finally alone. The door is closed. The phone is silent. The disruption has cleared the room. But the anxiety does not subside. It amplifies. A heavy, suffocating dread descends upon you. This is the moment the Matrix relies on. It expects you to crack under the pressure of the silence and run back to the noise. Why is the silence so terrifying? To answer this, we must unlock the forbidden psychology of Carl Jung. Jung understood a terrifying truth. An empty room is never actually empty. When you strip away the external world, the friends, the job, the digital validation, what remains is not nothingness. What remains is the immense, suppressed architecture of your own psyche. You are forced into an intimate, inescapable confrontation with the shadow. The shadow is the repository of everything the ego has deemed unacceptable. It holds your repressed traumas, your dark desires, your unacknowledged power, and the profound, terrifying truth of your multidimensional nature. For your entire life, the Matrix has provided you with a convenient escape hatch. Every time the shadow surfaced, you could simply check your notifications, turn on the television, or go to a party. You used the crowd as a shield against yourself. The system relies on what we can call the viscosity of the matrix. Think of the collective sleep state as a thick, viscous fluid. When you are immersed in it, your movements are sluggish, restricted. The sheer density of the crowd's low frequency slows down your psychic momentum. You feel stuck. But ironically, this viscosity feels safe to the ego because it prevents any sudden, destabilizing shifts in awareness. Isolation removes you from the fluid. You are suddenly thrust into a psychic vacuum. Without the heavy, viscous drag of the egregore holding you in place, your true frequency begins to accelerate wildly. The scaffolding of your artificial identity starts to collapse. The mask you wore for the crowd shatters. This collapse triggers a profound biological panic. Watch what happens in your body. Notice that sudden chill running down your spine. Pay attention to the erratic fluttering in your stomach. Your mind is desperately scanning the empty room for an external threat, but there is none. The threat is internal. The chill down your spine is the visceral realization that the voice in your head, the internal monologue you have always assumed was you, is actually an amalgamation of archonic programming, societal expectations, and parental conditioning. You are not the voice. You are the silent observer trapped behind it. The fear of loneliness is not the fear of being without others. It is the absolute terror of being left alone with the imposter you call I. Jung warned us that we must become a monster to find God. What he meant was that you must be willing to endure the grotesque, terrifying unraveling of your ego. You must sit in the agonizing fire of your own shadow. The system terrifies you with loneliness because it knows that the void is the only place where the ego can be dismantled. The Matrix cannot survive a population that has integrated its shadow. A sovereign being, comfortable in the silence, cannot be manipulated by the threat of ostracization. They cannot be bribed with cheap dopamine. The empty room is not a prison. It is Jung's mirror. It is the crucible where the false self burns away. And you must learn how to sit in the flames without reaching for an escape. The realization that your internal monologue is a foreign installation will trigger a profound survival panic. Your immediate instinct will be to numb the revelation. You will feel an overwhelming, almost violent urge to pick up your device, to call someone, anyone, just to ground yourself back in the familiar illusion. Do not move. This is the exact moment the Matrix expects you to fold. You are standing at the threshold of the void, and you need a protocol to survive it. Consider this. The impulse to escape the silence is not your own desire. It is a programmed reflex designed to abort your frequency upgrade. To override this, you must implement what we call the linger test. The rules are brutally simple. The next time you are alone, and the suffocating wave of anxiety hits, when your hand twitches automatically toward your phone to seek a dopamine pacifier, freeze. Do not deny the urge, but delay it. Force yourself to sit in the absolute center of that discomfort for exactly 3 more minutes. Watch what happens in your body during these moments. It will be fiercely uncomfortable. You might feel your skin crawling. The tightening in your chest will peak, and a heavy pulse will throb in your temples. Your ego will scream that this is unbearable. But let that sink in. You're not dying. You are simply witnessing the archonic programming short-circuiting as it is denied its usual energy source. You are starving the parasite. If you can hold your ground through the peak of the physical panic, something miraculous happens. The viscosity of the fear shatters. The anxiety collapses into a sudden, crystal-clear stillness. You have just opened a recognition window. This is a temporary breach in the Matrix's signal, a localized vacuum where the static of the collective egregore cannot reach you. In this window, your preconscious awareness comes online. Now imagine using this pristine silence not just to rest, but to navigate. Inside the recognition window, the universe begins to communicate directly through pattern recognition. You will start noticing synchronicities, repeating numbers, recurring symbols, or highly specific phrases echoing in your mind. Do not dismiss these as coincidences. Coincidences are just matrix glitches. You must immediately document them, write them down. You are capturing the raw data of your soul's native language. By tracking these synchronicities, you begin to map out your timeline pivot points. These are the hidden energetic junctions where you have the power to shift your reality onto a higher track. The system relies on your amnesia to keep you looping in the same karmic cycles. Documentation destroys the amnesia. When you observe the code of the simulation loses its authority over you. You stop being a reactive character in the script, and you begin to read the source code. The final deception of the Matrix is the belief that isolation is a state of deprivation. They trained you to view the empty room as a cell, and your lack of a crowd as a failure of character. Let us reverse this lie entirely. Isolation is not a penalty. It is a biological and spiritual quarantine, an incubation chamber designed for the metamorphosis of a god. The system fears your solitude because it is the only environment where your sovereign frequency can finally stabilize. Think back to the sheer terror of the void we discussed. You have faced Jung's mirror. You have allowed the artificial scaffolding of your ego to burn to ash. By refusing to run back to the dopamine dispensers of the egregore, you have starved the parasite. You have become the very monster the system dreads, an autonomous node of consciousness that cannot be bribed, shamed, or terrified into submission. You no longer need the crowd to tell you who you are. Watch what happens in your body right now as you accept this truth. Take a slow, deliberate breath. Notice how the anxious fluttering in your stomach has ceased. The suffocating tightness in your chest has dissolved, replaced by a profound, heavy groundedness, a deep, resonant anchor settling at the base of your spine. You are no longer vibrating with the chaotic, desperate static of the sleeping herd. You have reclaimed your native frequency. Now imagine the physics of what you have just accomplished. By resting in the still point of the void, you have fundamentally altered your energetic polarity. When you stop emitting the frantic frequency of seeking love, seeking validation, seeking connection, you create a powerful localized vacuum. You activate what we call synchronistic magnetism. You are no longer forcing your way through the viscosity of the matrix. You are bending the fabric of reality to pull the right timelines toward you. The organic portals and the archonic crowd will continue their frantic dance. They will remain submerged in the heavy, suffocating fluid of the sleep state, draining each other to survive. Let them sleep. You have no obligation to lower your frequency to drag them out. Your only responsibility is to hold the resonance of your own sovereignty, your very existence, vibrating at this precise, undeniable frequency, is the ultimate rebellion against the simulation. The next time the heavy cloak of silence descends upon your room, do not reach for the nearest digital pacifier. Do not let the skip reflex hijack your nervous system. Welcome the quarantine. Let the remaining decay of your old life fall away completely. The loneliness was never meant to break you. It was meticulously designed to break the chains that bound you to the illusion. You are not lonely. You are finally free. Solitude is not your prison. It is your throne. The quarantine is your coronation. You now possess the protocol, the physics, and the psychological map to navigate the void. If this message has recalibrated your internal pendulums, subscribe to this channel and remain anchored to the truth. The Matrix is watching your every move, but for the first time in your life, you are watching it back.